The morning sun filtered through the curtains of our bedroom window, painting golden streaks across the oak floors. I stretched languidly in our king-sized bed, my hand automatically reaching for Marcus's side. Empty, but still warm. The faint scent of his cologne lingered on his pillow. I smiled, picturing him in the kitchen, preparing breakfast for our twins as he did every Saturday morning. For 15 years, Marcus Bennett had been my rock, my partner, my everything. We met in college. He was the charming business major, with ambitious dreams, and I was the cautious art history student who fell hard for his infectious laugh and unwavering confidence. Now, at 40, Marcus was a successful investment banker, and I, Olivia Bennett, had built a respectable career as a museum curator while raising our 14-year-old twins, Lily and Lucas. "Mom, Dad's making those gross protein pancakes again." Lucas's voice carried up the stairs, tinged with teenage disgust. I laughed, slipping on my robe and heading downstairs. Our Tudor-style home in Westchester County, New York, was everything I'd ever dreamed of. Spacious yet cozy, elegant yet lived in, the perfect setting for our seemingly perfect life. In the kitchen, Marcus stood at the stove, his broad shoulders moving rhythmically as he flipped pancakes. At 42, he was even more handsome than the day we met. Salt and pepper now peppered his dark hair, and laugh lines crinkled the Y corners of his warm brown eyes. He turned and flashed me that smile that still made my heart skip. "Morning, beautiful," he said, leaning in for a kiss. "Coffee's ready." I inhaled the rich aroma, pouring myself a cup. "The annual Bennett family reunion is next weekend. Your mother called yesterday to remind us." Marcus's spatula paused mid-flip. "Right, at the lake house. 3 days with your entire family. Your mother's been planning this for months." I sipped my coffee, studying him over the rim. "Is everything okay?" "Of course," he said quickly, his smile returning. "Just thinking about work. I might need to step away for a few calls during the weekend." I frowned. "Marcus, you promised. No work during family time, especially the reunion. Your brothers are coming from across the country." I know. He slid pancakes onto a plate. "Just a couple of important deals closing. Nothing to worry about." I watched him call the twins for breakfast, the momentary tension forgotten. Marcus had been working longer hours lately, but that wasn't unusual during the summer quarter. If anything, I should be grateful. His success afforded us this beautiful life, the private schools for the twins, our vacation home in Cape Cod, the security I'd never had growing up. Later that morning, as I sorted through summer clothes for the upcoming reunion, my phone pinged with a text from my best friend, Rachel. "Drinks tonight? Need to vent about Derek." I smiled. Rachel and her husband were perpetually in some minor crisis. I texted back, "Absolutely. 7 p.m. at Vincenzo's? Perfect. Need all the martinis." I returned to packing, unaware that my own perfect life was balanced on the edge of a cliff, ready to crumble with a single push. Vincenzo's was our regular spot, intimate enough for private conversations, but lively. Enough to feel like a proper night out. Rachel was already at our usual table, martini in hand, her red hair pulled into a messy bun. "He forgot our anniversary," she announced as I sat down. 15 years, Liv. 15 years, and he forgot." I signaled the waiter for my usual gin and tonic. "Derek has the memory of a goldfish when it comes to dates. Remember when he showed up a day late for his own birthday dinner?" Rachel laughed despite herself. "Valid point. How are things in paradise? Marcus still perfect?" "Nobody's perfect," I protested, though the words sounded hollow even to me. "But yes, we're good. Busy with work, the twins are being typical teenagers, and we're preparing for the Bennett family reunion from hell next weekend." Ah, the infamous reunion. 3 days with the mother-in-law from hell and Marcus's overachieving siblings. Poor Liv. She raised her glass in a mock toast. It's not that bad, I defended, though we both knew. I dreaded these events. Eleanor Bennet had never quite warmed to me, always finding subtle ways to suggest I wasn't quite good enough for her precious eldest son. Marcus has been a bit distracted lately, though, probably work stress. Rachel's perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. Distracted how? I shrugged. Late nights at the office, constantly on his phone? The usual during busy periods. Rachel took a deliberate sip of her martini. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. She set her glass down carefully. Just be observant, Liv. Men get distracted for all sorts of reasons. I felt a flicker of annoyance. Marcus isn't Derek. He wouldn't. I didn't say he would, Rachel interrupted, her tone softening. Look, I've known you both forever. Marcus adores you. I'm just saying that sometimes we miss things because we don't want to see them. There's nothing to see, I insisted, but Rachel's words had planted a seed. Tiny, almost imperceptible, but there nonetheless. When I returned home, the house was quiet. The twins were at friends' houses for sleepovers, and Marcus was working. Late again. I kicked off my heels and wandered through our silent home, suddenly seeing it through different eyes. Was I missing something? In our home office, Marcus's laptop sat on the desk. He never left it open. Client confidentiality was paramount in his work, but tonight it hummed in sleep mode. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the keyboard. This wasn't me. I didn't snoop, didn't doubt. I closed the laptop firmly and headed upstairs, pushing away Rachel's insinuations. Our marriage was solid. We had built a life of trust, respect, and love. Whatever was occupying Marcus's mind lately, he would share it when he was ready. As I drifted off to sleep, alone in our king-sized bed, I told myself everything was fine. The Bennet family reunion would be a good opportunity to reconnect, away from the pressures of work and daily routines. I couldn't have known that the reunion would become the stage for the most devastating revelation of my life. One that would shatter the perfect image I had so carefully maintained and force me to question everything I thought I knew about my husband, my marriage, and myself. Chapter 2: Cracks in the Foundation. The week leading up to the reunion passed in a blur of preparations and increasing anxiety. Marcus seemed distracted, often lost in thought during dinner or conversations. When asked, he'd smile that reassuring smile and attribute it to work pressures. I chose to believe him, suppressing the tiny seed of doubt Rachel had planted. On Friday morning, we loaded our SUV for the 3-hour drive to the Bennet family lake house in the Adirondacks. The twins bickered in the back seat about whose playlist would torture us during the journey, while Marcus checked his phone repeatedly before we even left the driveway. Everything okay? I asked, fastening my seatbelt. Just confirming some details with the office, he replied, finally putting his phone away. All set now. 3 days of family fun ahead. His enthusiasm sounded forced, but I didn't press. The last thing I wanted was to start the weekend with an argument. The Bennet Lake House was a sprawling property that had been in the family for generations. Eleanor and William Bennet had modernized it over the years, but it still maintained its rustic charm with stone fireplaces and wooden beams. As we pulled into the long driveway, several cars were already parked outside. Marcus's brothers had arrived with their families. Eleanor appeared on the wide porch, immaculate as always in crisp white linen pants and a blue blouse, her silver hair styled perfectly despite the humidity. There they are, she called, descending the steps to greet us. She embraced Marcus first, of course, then the twins. I received the customary air kiss and a once-over that left me feeling scrutinized. Olivia, darling, you look comfortable, she said, eyeing my simple sundress and flat sandals. The humidity is dreadful for your hair type, isn't it? And so it began. Inside, the house buzzed with activity. Marcus's younger brother James, His wife Patricia and their 3 children had claimed the East Wing rooms. Michael, the youngest Bennett brother, was there with his husband David and their adopted daughter Emma. William Bennett, Marcus's father, was holding court in the great room, regaling the children with exaggerated tales of his youth. "Olivia!" Patricia embraced me warmly. Unlike Eleanor, Patricia had always been welcoming, perhaps because she too was an outsider to the Bennett legacy. "Thank God you're here. Eleanor's been micromanaging the menu since dawn." I laughed, feeling some tension ease. "Some things never change. How have you been?" "Surviving. James is up for partner at his firm, so it's been all work and no play." She lowered her voice. "Though I suspect that's familiar territory for you, given Marcus's schedule." I nodded non-committally, watching as Marcus greeted his brothers with backslaps and easy laughter. He seemed more relaxed already, the worries of the week sliding off his shoulders. This was his element. Family, tradition, the comfortable weight of the Bennett name. The afternoon passed pleasantly enough. The children disappeared to the lake under William's supervision, while the adults caught up on the porch with drinks. Eleanor orchestrated the dinner preparations like a military campaign, assigning tasks with precision. "Marcus, your friend. From Columbia, what was his name? Garrett? He called the house last week," Eleanor mentioned casually as we prepared salads. "Said he tried your cell but couldn't reach you." Marcus, who had been uncorking wine bottles, paused briefly. "Must have been when I was in that conference in Chicago. What did he want?" "Just to catch up," he said. "I gave him your office number." I glanced at Marcus. "You didn't mention a Chicago conference." There was a beat of silence, almost imperceptible. "It was just a quick overnight trip, not worth mentioning." Eleanor raised an eyebrow but said nothing, moving on to instruct Patricia on the proper way to arrange dinner rolls. I continued slicing tomatoes, the knife hitting the cutting board, with more force than necessary. Later that night, after a dinner filled with Bennett family reminiscing and gentle ribbing, I found myself alone on the dock, watching moonlight shimmer across the lake. The air was warm, heavy with the scent of pine and the distant promise of rain. "Mind if I join you?" It was Michael, offering a glass of wine. I smiled, accepting it gratefully. Of all the Bennett siblings, Michael was the most approachable, thoughtful, straightforward, without the competitive edge that Marcus and James seemed to have inherited. "Escaping the Bennett Olympics?" he asked, sitting beside me. I laughed. "Just needed some air. How's the gallery doing?" Michael and David ran a successful art gallery in San Francisco, focusing on emerging artists. "Thriving. We just signed an incredible new sculptor you would love." He took a sip of wine. "And you? Still happy at the museum?" "I am. We're preparing for a major exhibition next spring." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Michael spoke again. "Is everything okay with you and Marcus?" The question caught me off guard. "Of course. Why do you ask?" Michael shrugged. "Just a feeling. He seems, I don't know, on edge. And you two usually orbit each other at these gatherings, but tonight you've barely exchanged a word." "He's been working a lot," I said defensively. "We're fine." "Okay." Michael didn't sound convinced. "It's just, you know you can talk to me, right? Bennett by marriage is still a Bennett." I squeezed his hand gratefully. "I know. But really, everything's fine." When I returned to the house, I found Marcus on the phone on the back porch, speaking in hushed tones. He ended the call abruptly when he saw me. "Work?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Just wrapping up some loose ends," he replied, sliding his phone into his pocket. "Beautiful night, isn't it?" I studied his face in the dim porch light. There were shadows under his eyes I hadn't noticed before, tension in the set of his jaw. "Marcus, is there something you're not telling me?" He seemed to consider the question for a moment too long. "Of course not. I'm just tired, Liv. Let's go to bed." As we prepared for sleep in the guest room that had been ours for 15 years of reunions, the space between us and the queen-sized bed felt wider than usual. I listened to Marcus's breathing, waiting for it to settle into the familiar rhythm of sleep. But he remained awake, staring at the ceiling. "I love you," I whispered into the darkness, suddenly needing to hear him say it back. There was a slight pause before he responded. "I love you too, Liv. Always." I fell asleep eventually, clinging to those words like a lifeline. But in my dreams, they echoed differently, carrying a finality I couldn't understand. Morning brought chaos as always, children racing through the house, Eleanor orchestrating breakfast, William telling the same fishing stories he'd been recycling for decades. The day's agenda included the traditional family picnic by the lake, followed by water sports and games. I was helping Patricia arrange food on the picnic tables when I noticed Marcus standing apart from the group, on his phone again. His expression was serious, his free hand gesturing emphatically. Whatever the call was about, it wasn't routine business. "Third call this morning," James commented, appearing beside me with a cooler of drinks. "Must be some crisis at the office." "On a Saturday?" Patricia questioned. James shrugged. "Money never sleeps, right, Marcus?" he called out. Marcus looked up, startled, then forced a smile and ended his call. "Just putting out fires," he said, joining us at the tables. "All good." Now, but it wasn't all good. As the day progressed, I caught him checking his phone repeatedly, his attention split between the family activities and whatever was pulling him elsewhere. During the traditional Bennett family photo, his smile seemed strained. When Lucas beat him at their annual chess match, Marcus barely seemed to notice, congratulating his son absently. "Dad, you let me win," Lucas accused, disappointed. "What?" "No, you beat me fair and square," Marcus assured him, ruffling his hair. "You're getting good, buddy." Lucas walked away, unconvinced, and I approached Marcus with growing concern. "What's going on with you today?" "Nothing," he insisted. "Just tired." "Marcus, you've been just tired for weeks now. Talk to me." He looked at me then, really looked at me, for what felt like the first time in months. Something in his eyes made my heart stutter. Regret? Sadness? Fear? Before he could respond, Eleanor called everyone for the afternoon games. The rest of the day passed in a haze of forced gaiety. I participated in the three-legged race with Lily, cheered during the swimming contests, laughed at the right moments during family stories. But part of me remained detached, observing Marcus, noting how he kept checking the driveway, how he startled at the sound of cars approaching. Was he expecting someone, or was he looking for an escape? That evening, after another elaborate dinner, William announced it was time for charades, a Bennett reunion tradition. Teams were formed, drinks were poured, and the competitive spirit that defined the Bennetts emerged in full force. I was paired with David against Marcus and Patricia. As we played, I noticed Marcus becoming increasingly distracted, checking his watch, glancing toward the windows. During Patricia's turn, when she was dramatically acting out Gone with the Wind, Marcus's phone vibrated on the coffee table. He reached for it, read something on the screen, and his face drained of color. "Excuse me," he muttered, stepping out of the room. The game continued, but I couldn't focus. After a few minutes, I followed him, finding him on the front porch, pacing. "Marcus?" I approached cautiously. "What's happening?" He turned, his expression a mixture of panic and resignation. "Liv, The sound of tires on gravel interrupted him. Headlights swept across the front of the house as a car pulled into the driveway, a red compact that I didn't recognize. Marcus froze, his eyes fixed on the vehicle. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." "Marcus!" My voice sounded strange to my own ears. "Who is that?" He didn't answer, moving instead toward the steps as the car door opened. A woman emerged, tall, blonde, perhaps in her early 30s. She wore a simple white dress that emphasized her slender figure, and as she approached the porch light, I could see she was beautiful in an effortless way. But what caught my attention, what made my breath catch and my world tilt, was the pronounced swell of her abdomen beneath the white fabric. She was pregnant, very pregnant. Our eyes met across the yard, hers defiant, mine bewildered. Then she looked at Marcus, who had gone completely still. "Surprised to see me?" she called out, her voice carrying in the quiet evening air. "I got tired of waiting for you to answer my calls." By now, others had come onto the porch, drawn by the unexpected arrival. I was vaguely aware of Eleanor's sharp intake of breath, of Michael's hand suddenly on my shoulder. "What is the meaning of this?" Eleanor demanded, looking from the woman to Marcus. "Who is this person?" The woman laughed, a bitter sound. "I'm Sophia Miller." She mounted the steps with deliberate slowness, one hand resting protectively on her belly. When she reached the top, she looked directly at me, her eyes filled with a strange mixture of sympathy and triumph. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way," she said. "But your husband's been avoiding me for weeks, and I'm done being the dirty little secret." The ground seemed to shift beneath my feet. I looked at Marcus, silently pleading for him to deny it, to explain away this nightmare. Instead, he whispered, "Sophia, please. Not like this." The woman, Sophia, turned to face the stunned family gathering, her hand still cradling her swollen belly. "I'm Marcus's mistress," she announced, her voice ringing in the shocked silence. "And I'm carrying his daughter." The world around me went silent, every sound muffled as if I were underwater. I stared at Marcus, at this woman, at the physical evidence of betrayal growing inside her. 15 years of marriage, of trust, of building a life together, all of it shattered in a single moment. In the silence that followed her declaration, I found my voice at last. "How long?" I asked, the question barely audible. Marcus looked at me, his face a mask of anguish. "Live? How? Long?" I repeated, each word a shard of glass in my throat. It was Sophia who answered, her eyes never leaving Marcus's face. 2 years. We met at a conference in Boston. 2 years. 730 days of lies. Of coming home to me and the twins, of family vacations and anniversary celebrations, all while building a separate life with this woman. This woman who was now carrying his child. Eleanor's voice cut through my thoughts, sharp as a blade. "This is preposterous. Marcus, tell this person. She is mistaken." But Marcus couldn't meet his mother's eyes, couldn't meet mine. And, in his silence, I found my answer. "Liv, please," he finally said, reaching for me. "Let me explain." I stepped back, away from his touch. "Explain what, exactly? How you've been living a double life? How you've been lying to me, to our children? Or how about explaining how this woman is pregnant with your child while you share a bed with me every night?" The twins had appeared in the doorway, their faces confused and frightened. Lily's eyes were wide, filling with tears as she processed the scene before her. Lucas stood rigid, his expression shifting from confusion to dawning comprehension to rage. "Dad?" Lily's voice was small, uncertain. Marcus turned, seeing our children for the first time. "Lily, Lucas, go inside, please." "No," Lucas said, his voice breaking. "Is it true? Is she inside? Now?" It was Michael who spoke, gentle but firm, guiding my children away from the unfolding disaster. David followed, throwing a disgusted look at Marcus as he went. I stood there, surrounded by the Bennett family, feeling utterly alone. The perfect life I thought I had, the loving husband, the beautiful home, the stable family. It had all been an illusion, a house of cards now collapsing around me. Sophia still stood on the porch, one hand on her belly, watching the destruction she had wrought with a mixture of satisfaction and uncertainty. "You should leave," James said to her, breaking the silence. She shook her head. "I've been hiding. For 2 years. I'm done hiding. Marcus promised me." "I never promised to leave my family," Marcus interrupted, finally finding his voice. "I told you we needed time to figure things out." Sophia's face hardened. "You told me you loved me. You told me you wanted this baby." Each word was a physical blow. I swayed slightly and Patricia was suddenly beside me, her arm around my waist. "Olivia, let's go inside," she murmured. But I couldn't move. Couldn't look away from the train. Wreck of my marriage. "Did you?" I asked Marcus. "Did you tell her you loved her?" He looked at me then, his eyes pleading. "It's complicated, Liv." A bitter laugh escaped me. "That's not a denial." Eleanor had recovered her composure, her back straightening as she took control of the situation. "This is a family matter," she said coldly to Sophia. "Whatever your relationship with my son, this is neither the time nor place for such a discussion." Sophia's laugh mirrored my own. "Family matter? I'm carrying your grandchild, Mrs. Bennet. I'd say that makes it my business." "Too. You need to leave," William said, speaking for the first time. His voice, usually jovial, was steel. "Now." For a moment, Sophia seemed to waver, looking at Marcus as if expecting him to defend her, to choose her. When he remained silent, staring at the ground, something in her expression broke. "Fine," she said. "I'll go. But this isn't over, Marcus. I'm done waiting." As she turned to leave, her eyes met mine one last time. "I really am sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't know about the reunion. I just couldn't reach him, and the doctor said, well, there are complications. He needed to know." With that, she descended the steps, her white dress ghostly in the gathering darkness, and returned to her car. We all watched in silence as she drove away, her taillights disappearing down the long driveway. In her wake, she left destruction. My marriage, my family, my trust, all of it lay in ruins at my feet. I turned to Marcus, a stranger now in the body of the man I'd loved for 15 years. "I'm taking the twins home," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Don't follow us." "Olivia, please," he began, reaching for me again. I stepped back. "Don't touch me. Don't speak to me. In fact, don't come home at all." With those words, I walked into the house to find my children, leaving Marcus alone on the porch with the weight of his choices. The perfect life I thought I had was gone, shattered by a woman in a white dress and the secret she carried within her. My husband's daughter, the living proof of his betrayal. Chapter 3. Aftermath. The drive home from the lake house remained, etched in my memory as 3 hours of exquisite torture. Lucas sat beside me in the passenger seat, rigid with fury, while Lily curled in the back, silent tears streaming down her face. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, focusing on the road with single-minded determination while my mind reeled. 2 years. He'd been having an affair for 2 years. The revelation played on loop in my head, each repetition bringing fresh waves of pain and humiliation. How had I not seen it? The late nights, the business trips, the distracted conversations, all the signs had been there, but I'd chosen to trust, to believe. "Did you know?" Lucas asked suddenly, breaking the heavy silence. I glanced at him, at the anger and hurt etched on his young face. "No," I said quietly. "I had no idea. How could he do this to us?" Lily's voice was small, broken. I had no answer. The question echoed my own thoughts, the same bewilderment, the same sense of betrayal. How could Marcus, who had seemed so devoted, so present in our lives, have created a parallel life with another woman? How could he have conceived a child with her while coming home to us night after night? What happens now? Lucas asked, staring straight ahead. I don't know, I admitted. The future, which had seemed so certain just days ago, was now a vast unknown. But we'll figure it out together, I promise. By the time we reached our house, the home Marcus and I had built together, it was past midnight. The twins disappeared. To their rooms without a word, doors closing with quiet finality. I stood in the entryway, suddenly a stranger in my own life. Photos lined the hallway. Our wedding day, the twins' birth, family vacations, moments of joy frozen in time. I moved through the house in a daze, seeing everything through new eyes. How many lies had been exchanged in these rooms? How many times had Marcus come home from being with her and kissed me hello? Had he showered first, washing away the evidence? Had he composed text messages to her while sitting across from me at dinner? In our bedroom, I stared at the king-sized bed we'd shared for years. The thought of lying in it now made my stomach turn. Instead, I collapsed into the armchair by the window, watching as dawn gradually lightened the sky. My phone buzzed incessantly. Throughout the night, calls and texts from Marcus that I ignored, messages of concern from Michael and Patricia. Rachel called 6 times before I finally answered. Liv, what's going on? Michael called me. He said something happened at the reunion. I laughed, a hollow sound. You could say that. Turns out you were right to be suspicious. Marcus has been having an affair for 2 years, and his pregnant mistress showed up at the reunion to announce it to the entire family. There was a beat of shocked silence. Oh my God, Liv, I'm coming over. No, I said quickly. The twins are asleep. I need time to process this. Olivia Bennett, listen to me. Rachel's voice was firm. You are not going through this alone. I'll be there in 30 minutes with coffee and bagels. We don't have to talk if you don't want to. But I'm not letting you sit alone in that house. True to her word, Rachel arrived with breakfast and an unwavering presence that anchored me as I drifted in shock. She listened as I recounted the previous night's events, her expressions shifting from disbelief to fury to heartbreak. I'll kill him, she said simply when I finished. Actually, no. First, I'll hire the best divorce attorney in New York. Then I'll kill him. Despite everything, I found myself smiling faintly. Get in line. Lucas might beat you to it. How are they doing? I sighed, rubbing my temples. In shock, angry, hurt. Lucas won't even say his name, and Lily just keeps asking why. And what about you? What do you need right now? I stared out the window at the perfect suburban street where my perfect life had been nothing but an elaborate facade. I need answers. I need to understand how the man I've loved for 15 years could do this. And then I need to figure out what comes next. Marcus returned home that evening, using his key to enter cautiously, as if expecting to be ambushed. In a way, he was. Lucas, hearing the door, flew down the stairs, fists clenched. Get out, he shouted, his adolescent voice cracking with emotion. You don't live here anymore. Marcus stood in the entryway, defeat written in every line of his body. Lucas, please, I know you're angry. Angry? You think I'm angry? Lucas laughed, the sound chillingly adult. I hate you. Do you understand? I hate you. That's enough, Lucas, I said, appearing from the kitchen. Go upstairs. Mom? Now please. With a final venomous glance at his father, Lucas stormed upstairs, his bedroom door slamming moments later. I faced Marcus, taking in his disheveled appearance, unshaven, rumpled clothes, eyes bloodshot from what I guessed was a combination of no sleep and plenty of alcohol. Lily doesn't want to see you, I said evenly. She's staying with Patricia. And James tonight. Marcus nodded, accepting this. Can we talk? I think we're well past talking. Liv, please. I know I've hurt you in the worst possible way, but I need to explain. Explain what? How you've been living a double life? How you've been sleeping with another woman for 2 years? Or how about explaining how she's pregnant with your child while you were planning our family vacation to Italy this summer? He flinched at each question. All of it. Everything. I owe you that much. I laughed bitterly. You owe me a hell of a lot more than that, Marcus. But sure, let's talk. Let's have the conversation where you try to explain away 2 years of lies. We moved to the living room, sitting on opposite ends of the sofa where we'd cuddled countless times watching movies with the twins. The distance between us now seemed insurmountable. I met Sophia at a finance conference in Boston, Marcus began, staring at his hands. It wasn't something I planned. We got talking at a networking event, had drinks afterward. One thing led to another. Spare me the cliches, I cut in. You're not the first man to cheat, Marcus. I don't need the how it happened so much as the why. He looked up, his eyes pleading. I don't have a good answer for that. It wasn't about you, Liv. You've been a perfect wife, a perfect mother. Then why? My voice broke. Why wasn't that enough? Marcus was silent for a long moment. I think I've been lost for a while. Work pressure, turning 40, watching the twins grow up so fast. I started questioning everything. And Sophia, she was new, different. With her, I could be someone else, someone without all the responsibilities and expectations. So you created a second life because being a husband and father was too much. Pressure. I couldn't keep the incredulity from my voice. Do you have any idea how pathetic that sounds? I know, he admitted. I know there's no justification. What started as a fling became something more. I tried to end it multiple times, but what? She was younger? More exciting? Better in bed? It wasn't like that, Marcus protested. It became complicated. She wanted more than I could give, threatened to tell you. Then when she got pregnant, I felt as if I'd been punched. When did you find out about the baby? 3 months ago. 3 months. While we were planning the twins' birthday party, while we were discussing high school options, while we were having sex in our marriage bed, he had known another woman was carrying his child. Were you ever going to tell me? I asked. Or were you planning to keep living this double life indefinitely? Marcus ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it hurt. I didn't know what to do. I told Sophia I needed time to figure things out, to find the right way to tell you. She was getting impatient, but I never thought she'd show up like that. She mentioned complications with the pregnancy. A shadow crossed his face. Yes, there are concerns. The baby has a heart condition. They'll need to operate right after birth. The baby. A little girl with a heart condition. Despite everything, I felt a pang for the innocent child caught in this mess. A child who would be my children's half-sister. What do you want, Marcus? I asked finally. What's your plan here? He looked lost, bewildered by his own choices. I don't know. I love you, Liv. I love our family. But Sophia's having my child, and I can't just abandon them. You already have a family, I reminded him coldly. One you didn't seem to have trouble abandoning emotionally for the past 2 years. That's not fair. Fair? I stood up, anger surging. You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that I've spent 15 years building a life with you, believing in us, only to find out it was all a lie? Is it fair that our children had to witness your mistress announcing her pregnancy to your entire family? Is it fair that I have to figure out how to rebuild my life at 40 while you play house with your 20-something girlfriend? Marcus stood too, his face pained. She's 34, and I'm not trying to... He stopped, realizing how ridiculous he sounded. I'm sorry, you're right. None of this is fair to you. I want you to leave. I said, suddenly exhausted. Pack? What you need and go. I can't look at you right now. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. I turned away, unable to bear the sight of him. You've made your choices, Marcus. Now you get to live with them. He stood there for a moment longer, as if waiting for me to change my mind. When I remained silent, he moved past me toward the stairs. I never meant to hurt you, Liv, he said softly. You have to believe that. I didn't respond, listening to his footsteps as he climbed the stairs to pack. An hour later, he was gone, the front door closing behind him with a quiet finality that belied the destruction he'd left in his wake. That night, alone in the house, except for Lucas's seething presence down the hall, I allowed myself to truly break down. The sobs came from somewhere deep inside, raw and primal, the sound of a life shattering. I cried for the marriage I thought I had, for the future that had been stolen from me, for my children who would bear the scars of their father's betrayal. And in the midst of my grief, a small, hard kernel of resolve began to form. I would survive this. I would rebuild. For my children. For myself. The life I had known was over, but perhaps from its ashes, I could create something new. Something honest, something real. What I didn't know then was that the revelation at the Bennett family reunion was only the beginning. The true test of my strength and the most unexpected turns in my journey still lay ahead. Chapter 4. Picking up the pieces Monday morning. Arrived with merciless brightness, sunlight streaming through windows I'd forgotten to close. I had barely slept, drifting in and out of consciousness on the guest room bed, unable to face the master bedroom Marcus and I had shared. The house was quiet, too quiet. Lucas had eventually agreed to join Lily at James and Patricia's, giving me space I both craved and dreaded. Alone with my thoughts, I oscillated between numbness and fury, between plotting elaborate revenge and curling into a ball of misery. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Meeting canceled. Coming over. With coffee and legal advice. No arguments. 20 minutes later, she walked in without knocking, armed with a tray of lattes and a determined expression. You look like hell, she announced, setting the coffee on the kitchen counter. Thanks, I muttered, accepting the cup she pushed toward me. Just what every newly betrayed wife wants to hear. Shower, clothes, makeup, in that order, Rachel instructed. We're meeting Diane Levinson at 11. I blinked. Who's Diane Levinson? Only the most cutthroat divorce attorney in Westchester. She got my cousin Bethany full custody and the vacation house in Aspen when her ex cheated with his secretary. Classic, but effective. I haven't decided about divorce yet, I protested weakly. Rachel stared at me over her coffee cup. What exactly are you undecided about? The part where he had a 2-year affair, or the part where he impregnated his mistress? Put that way, it did seem rather clear-cut. Still, 15 years of marriage couldn't be erased so easily, no matter how catastrophic the betrayal. It's complicated, Rach. There are the twins to consider, our home, our finances. All of which are excellent reasons to consult an attorney immediately, she countered. Look, you don't have to file anything today. But you need to understand. Your options, protect your interests. Marcus already has a head start on blowing up your life. Don't let him control what comes next, too. She was right, of course. Marcus had made unilateral decisions that affected our entire family. I couldn't afford to be passive now. Fine, I conceded. But I'm not promising anything. 2 hours later, I sat across from Diane Levinson in her sleek downtown office. With her silver bob, immaculate suit, and penetrating gaze, she exuded exactly the kind of take-no-prisoners competence Rachel had promised. Mrs. Bennett, she began, I understand this is a difficult time. But I need you to set emotions aside for the next hour and focus on facts. She opened a leather portfolio. Your husband has been unfaithful, has fathered a child with his mistress, and has potentially been diverting marital assets to support this relationship. Is that correct? Put so bluntly, it sounded like the plot of a terrible Lifetime movie. Yes, I confirmed, though I don't know about the financial part. We'll get to that, Diane assured me. First, let me explain the divorce process in New York State and what you can reasonably expect given your circumstances. What followed was a crash course in divorce law, asset division, custody arrangements, and spousal support. Diane was thorough, methodical, and occasionally brutal in her assessment. With a 15-year marriage, 2 minor children, and your husband's significant income, you're in a strong position, she explained. His infidelity, while morally relevant, has limited legal impact unless we can prove he's spent substantial marital assets on Ms. Miller. I don't want to take him for everything he has, I said, uncomfortable with the predatory tone the conversation was taking. I just want what's fair for me and the kids. Fair is a subjective term, Mrs. Bennett. My job is to ensure you receive what you're legally entitled to. Diane leaned forward. Has your husband contacted you since leaving the house? He's called and texted. I haven't responded. Good. Any communication should go through legal channels moving forward. Speaking of which, I suggest we file a motion for temporary support and exclusive use of the marital home immediately. My head was spinning. This is all happening so fast. Diane's expression softened marginally. The early days after discovery are critical. Your husband is likely feeling guilty right now, which works to our advantage. Once he adjusts to the new reality and starts receiving advice from his own counsel, that window closes. By the time I left Diane's office, I had tentatively engaged her services and was clutching a folder of documents outlining next steps. Rachel, who had waited in the reception area, studied my face. Well, she's exactly as terrifying as you promised, I admitted. I haven't officially filed anything yet, but she's preparing the paperwork. Rachel nodded approvingly. Good. Now for part 2 of today's agenda, your bank accounts. What about them? We need to make sure Marcus can't drain them while you're deciding what to do. It happens all the time. Spouse finds out about affair, cheater panics and moves money. We're going to the bank to put safeguards in place. I wanted to protest that Marcus wouldn't do that, but the truth was, I no longer knew what Marcus was capable of. The man who could maintain a second relationship for 2 years, who could father a child with another woman while sharing my bed, that man was a stranger to me. At the bank, I opened separate accounts in my name alone and transferred half the funds from our joint checking and savings. Not all of it. I wasn't trying to punish Marcus or leave him without resources, but enough to ensure the twins and I would be secure while the legal process unfolded. What about the museum? Rachel asked as we left the bank. Are you going to take some time off? I shook my head. I need the normalcy. Besides, we're in the middle of planning the spring exhibition. I can't just disappear. You're allowed to fall apart a little, Liv. No one would blame you. Falling apart is a luxury I can't afford right now, I said firmly. The twins need stability, especially with their father gone. One parent imploding is enough. That evening, I picked up Lily and Lucas from James and Patricia's house. The contrast between my strained smile and Patricia's pitying gaze spoke volumes about how dramatically my social position had shifted. Once the enviable wife with the charming, successful husband, I was now an object of sympathy, the betrayed spouse, the woman who hadn't been enough to keep her man from straying. Eleanor called, Patricia said quietly as the twins gathered their things. She wanted to check on you and the kids. I stiffened. Eleanor Bennett, checking on me? The same woman who had spent 15 years finding subtle ways to remind me I wasn't quite good enough for her son? What did she want? Patricia sighed. She's in shock, Liv. We all are. I think she's trying to process how the son she thought she knew could do something like this. Join the club, I muttered. Did Marcus go to the lake house? No, James spoke to him briefly. He's staying at a hotel in the city for now. She hesitated. Sophia apparently went to see him there. Of course she had. They were having a baby together after all. A little girl with a heart condition who would need surgery after birth. Despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to hate a child who had no part in her parents' choices. Are you okay? Patricia asked, touching my arm gently. I managed a smile that felt like a grimace. I'm taking it day by day. The drive home with the twins was silent, each of us lost in our private thoughts. When we arrived, Lucas immediately retreated to his room, while Lily lingered in the kitchen, watching me unpack the groceries I'd picked up on the way. Is Dad coming back? She asked finally, her voice small. I set down the bag of apples I'd been holding, choosing my words carefully. Not right now, honey. Dad and I need some time apart to figure things out. Because of the baby? Her directness startled me. At 14, Lily was still my little girl in many ways, but she was old enough to understand the implications of what had happened at the reunion. Partly, I acknowledged, but mostly because Dad made some choices that hurt our family, and that's broken the trust between us. He's going to have another kid, she said, her voice flat. A half-sister. I nodded, unsure what to say. How did you explain to your child that their father had created a second family? Will we have to meet her? Lily asked. I don't know, sweetheart. That's something we'll have to figure out as we go. She was quiet for a moment, picking at a loose thread on her sweater. I hate him, she said finally. I hate him for what he did to you. I moved to her then, pulling her into a hug. You're allowed to be angry, Lily, but your dad loves you. What happened between him and me doesn't change that. How can you defend him? She asked, pulling away, her eyes flashing with hurt. After what he did? I'm not defending him, I said gently. But I don't want his mistakes to destroy your relationship with him. You and Lucas still need your father. Maybe I don't want him to be my father anymore, she replied, her voice breaking. Maybe I want a dad who doesn't lie and cheat and… Her words dissolved into sobs, and I held her close, my own tears mingling with hers. Later that night, after both twins had retreated to their rooms, I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of wine, staring at my phone. 23 missed calls and numerous texts from Marcus, all variations on the same themes. I'm sorry, I made a terrible mistake. Please talk to me. I love you. The last message had come an hour ago. Sophia had another doctor's appointment today. The baby's condition is worse than they thought. They're monitoring closely. I know you don't want to hear this, but I'm falling apart, Liv. I don't know how to handle any of this. I stared at the screen, torn between vindictive satisfaction and unwanted compassion. Part of me wanted Marcus to suffer, to experience even a fraction of the pain he'd inflicted on me. But another part, the part that had loved him for 15 years, ached at the thought of him alone in a hotel room, grappling with the consequences of his choices. Before I could talk myself out of it, I typed a response. I'm sorry about the baby. Whatever's happening between us, I wouldn't wish that on any child. But you need to stop calling and texting me. My lawyer will be in touch. His reply came seconds later. Lawyer? Liv? Please, can't we talk about this? We tried that. It didn't work. Please don't do this. I made a terrible mistake, but I still love you. We can work through this. I laughed bitterly at the screen. Work through this? Did he truly believe there was a way back from this level of betrayal? You're having a baby with another woman, Marcus. There's no working through that. It's over. The only things left to discuss are practical arrangements for the twins and the division of our assets. There was a long pause before his next message appeared. I never meant for any of this to happen. And yet it did, because of choices you made. Now you get to live with the consequences. I turned off my phone then, unable to bear any more of his self-pity. Marcus had destroyed our family with his selfish choices, and now he wanted me to comfort him? To reassure him that everything would be okay? That wasn't my job anymore. Nothing would ever be the same again, and the sooner he accepted that, the sooner we could all begin to move forward. The next morning, I returned to work at the museum, throwing myself into the preparations for our upcoming exhibition on Renaissance women artists. My colleagues were visibly surprised to see me. News travels fast in small communities. But mercifully, no one mentioned Marcus or the now infamous scene at the Bennett family reunion. Only Diana, the museum director and my mentor for the past decade, dared to address the elephant in the room when she stopped by my office mid-morning. "You're back," she observed, closing the door behind her. I looked up from the catalog proofs. I was reviewing. "Did you expect me to hide at home? After what happened at the reunion? Most people would." She sat across from me, her expression compassionate, but not pitying. At 65, Diana had navigated her own share of personal storms while building a career in the art world. "James called me, thought I should know what you're dealing with." Of course he had. Marcus's younger brother had always been protective of me in his own way. "I'm fine," I said automatically. "Or I will be, once I figure out what fine looks like now," Diana nodded. "For what it's worth, Marcus is an idiot. And I say that as someone who's been fond of him since you brought him to the museum gala 15 years ago." Despite everything, I smiled at the memory. Marcus had been so nervous that night. A young finance guy trying to impress my art world colleagues. He'd spent weeks studying art history books so he wouldn't embarrass me. "Thank you," I said simply. "But I'd rather focus on work right now. The exhibition opens in 3 months, and there's still so much to do." Diana understood, shifting the conversation to professional matters. We spent the next hour discussing exhibition layouts and loan agreements, the familiar terrain of my professional life providing a welcome respite from the chaos of my personal one. By the time I returned home that evening, I felt more centered, more capable of facing whatever came next. The twins were in their rooms, homework spread across their desks, a semblance of normal routine restored. I was preparing dinner when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I was surprised to see Eleanor Bennett standing on my porch, impeccably dressed as always, though the strain of recent events showed in the tightness around her eyes. For a moment, I considered pretending I wasn't home. My relationship with Marcus's mother had always been cordial but strained. She had made it clear from the beginning that she had envisioned a different kind of wife for her eldest son. But curiosity won out, and I opened the door. "Eleanor, this is unexpected." "May I come in?" she asked, her voice lacking its usual imperious tone. I stepped aside, leading her to the living room where we sat in awkward silence for a moment. "The twins?" she inquired. "Upstairs. Homework." She nodded, smoothing invisible wrinkles from her skirt. "I won't stay long. I just wanted to see how you're all doing." "As well as can be expected, given the circumstances." Eleanor winced slightly. "Yes, well, those circumstances are why I'm here." She met my gaze directly. "I want you to know that William and I are appalled by Marcus's behavior. What he's done to you and the children is unforgivable." Of all the things I had expected her to say, this wasn't it. Eleanor Bennett defending me against her golden boy? "Thank you," I said cautiously. "That means a lot." "We raised our sons to honor their commitments," she continued, a flash of the familiar sternness returning. "To respect their vows. William and I have been married for 46 years. It hasn't always been easy, but we faced our challenges together." She shook her head. "I don't understand what Marcus was thinking." "That makes 2 of us." Eleanor's gaze softened somewhat. "You've been a good wife to him, Olivia." a good mother to my grandchildren. Whatever issues I may have had with your unconventional upbringing, I've always respected how you've built this family." The backhanded compliment was so typically Eleanor that I almost laughed. My unconventional upbringing, a diplomatic reference to my bohemian artist mother who had raised me alone after my father abandoned us, had always been a source of concern for the status-conscious Bennets. "I've consulted an attorney," I told her, curious about her reaction. "I'm not sure what comes next, but I need to protect myself and the twins." To my surprise, Eleanor nodded approvingly. "Good. Marcus needs to face the consequences of his actions. And speaking of consequences," she reached into her handbag and withdrew an envelope. "This might be helpful." I accepted it warily. "What is this?" "Information about Marcus's finances that you might not be aware of. Investment accounts, property holdings, that sort of thing." I stared at her in disbelief. "You're giving me financial ammunition against your son?" A faint smile curved her lips. "I'm ensuring my grandchildren are provided for, and that you have what you need to raise them properly. Marcus has responsibilities he seems to have forgotten." The Eleanor Bennet I thought I knew would never have taken my side against her son. But perhaps I had misjudged her, or perhaps her allegiance to the Bennet family name and reputation outweighed even her devotion to Marcus. "The girl," Eleanor said, her voice hardening. "This Sophia person. Have you met her properly?" "No, just the scene at the reunion. William has had her investigated." At my startled look, she continued unperturbed. "We needed to know who she is, given the circumstances." "And?" I couldn't help feeling curious. "Sophia Miller, 34, marketing executive at Linden Partners, where she met Marcus during a consultation 2 years ago. Never married. No children, comes from a respectable family in Connecticut. No criminal record, good professional reputation." Eleanor's lips thinned. She knew he was married from the beginning, made no attempt to end things when she discovered she was pregnant. "Did you expect her to quietly disappear?" "I expected her to have more dignity than to show up at a family gathering and create a scene," Eleanor replied crisply. "But that's irrelevant now. The point is, Marcus has created this situation, and now all of us are left to deal with the fallout." Her words echoed my own thoughts so closely it was disconcerting. Were Eleanor and I actually on the same side for once? "The baby has a heart condition," I said, not sure why I was sharing this with her. "They'll need to operate after birth." Something flickered in Eleanor's eyes, concern perhaps for the grandchild she hadn't asked for. "I see. That's unfortunate. Will you acknowledge the child?" I asked bluntly. "As a Bennet?" Eleanor's posture stiffened. "That remains to be seen. It's complicated." "It's actually very simple," I found myself saying. "That baby is innocent in all this. She didn't ask to be born into this mess." "You're defending the child of your husband's mistress?" Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "You're either a saint or a fool, Olivia." "Neither," I said wearily. "Just someone who knows what it's like to grow up feeling unwanted by half your family." My father's rejection had shaped my childhood in profound ways. While my mother had given me all the love and support she could, his absence had left a void that never quite filled. I wouldn't wish that on any child, even one born of betrayal. Eleanor studied me with new interest. "You continue to surprise me, Olivia. Perhaps that's why Marcus was drawn to you initially. You're not easily categorized." Before I could respond to this unexpected insight, the sound of footsteps on the stairs announced the twins' presence. Lily appeared first, freezing, when she saw her grandmother. "Grandma, what are you doing here?" Eleanor rose gracefully. "I came to see how you and your brother are doing, of course." Lucas appeared behind his sister, his expression guarded. "Did Dad send you to spy on us?" "Lucas," I admonished, but Eleanor waved away my concern. Your father doesn't know I'm here, she told them. This visit is just between us. Both twins seemed unsure how to react. Their relationship with Eleanor had always been more formal than warm. She wasn't the type of grandmother who baked cookies or played board games. But she had always been present for important moments, generous with gifts and educational opportunities. Your grandmother brought us some information that will be helpful, I explained, gesturing to the envelope on the coffee table. And she wanted to make sure we're all okay. We're not okay, Lucas said flatly. Dad ruined everything. Eleanor didn't contradict him. What your father did was wrong, she said simply. But families weather storms, Lucas. This one is particularly severe, but you have your mother and you have us. William and I will always be here for you both. Lily's eyes filled with tears at this unexpected show of support. Even though Dad's having another baby? Eleanor's expression softened in a way I had rarely seen. You and Lucas are Bennetts. Nothing will ever change that. It wasn't quite an answer about the unborn child's status, but it seemed to reassure the twins. After a few more minutes of awkward conversation, Eleanor prepared to leave. At the door, she paused. I meant what I said, Olivia. William and I support you in this difficult time. Whatever you need for yourself and the children, you only have to ask. I nodded, still processing this unexpected alliance. Thank you, Eleanor. After she left, I stood in the entryway, the envelope of financial information in my hand, feeling as if the ground beneath my feet had shifted once again. But for the first time since Sophia Miller had appeared on the Bennett's porch, the shift felt like one I might be able to navigate. That night, I opened the envelope Eleanor had given me and began to educate myself about exactly what Marcus had hidden from me. Investment accounts I hadn't known existed, properties held in his name alone, financial maneuvers that had kept significant assets separate from our marital property. My husband had been preparing for a potential divorce long before his mistress revealed his secret. The question was, had he been protecting himself from me or from Sophia? And more importantly, how would I use this information to secure the future my children deserved? The betrayal had new layers, each one darker than the last. But with each revelation, my resolve strengthened. The life I had known was gone, but from its ruins, I would build something new. Something that didn't depend on Marcus Bennett or the illusion of security he had provided. I just had to figure out what that new life looked like and how to get there from the wreckage of the old one. Chapter 5. New Realities. 3 weeks after the reunion, my life had settled into an uneasy new rhythm. The twins resumed school, I buried myself in work at the museum, and Marcus remained in limbo, living in a hotel, desperately trying to maintain connections with the children who now viewed him with a mixture of anger and suspicion, and presumably, preparing for fatherhood with Sophia. The legal machinery was in motion. Diane Levinson had filed for temporary support and exclusive use of our home, which Marcus didn't contest. The initial financial disclosures confirmed much of what Eleanor's envelope had revealed. Marcus had systematically kept significant assets separate from our marital property. It's not uncommon, Diane explained during our weekly update. Successful men often take steps to protect wealth, especially inherited money or premarital assets. But we didn't have any of that, I pointed out. Everything we built together after we married. Diane nodded, making a note. Which strengthens our position considerably. New York is an equitable distribution state, not a community property state. That means the court divides marital assets fairly, not necessarily equally. Given the circumstances, I believe we can make a strong case for you receiving more than half. The clinical discussion of dividing 15 years of shared life into assets and liabilities left me feeling hollow. This wasn't how our story was supposed to end. with attorneys and financial disclosures and custody schedules. What about the other child? I asked. Will that affect support for the twins? Marcus will have financial obligations to all his children, Diane confirmed. But the court prioritizes existing dependents. The twins' standard of living should be maintained. It felt surreal discussing Marcus's unborn daughter in such detached terms, as a financial liability rather than a human being. But this was my new reality, a world where the man I had loved had created another family, another life, that would forever be connected to ours whether we wanted it or not. That weekend, Marcus had his first extended visitation with the twins since leaving the house. The custody arrangement Diane had negotiated allowed him to take them for the day on Saturdays, though Lily and Lucas were still too angry to consider overnight stays. I spent the day at the museum, grateful for the distraction of work. When I returned home that evening, I found the twins in the kitchen, a tension in the air that suggested the day hadn't gone smoothly. "How was it?" I asked carefully, setting down my bag. Lucas shrugged, aggressively spreading peanut butter on a slice of bread. "Fine." Lily, always more forthcoming, sighed. "It was weird. Dad took us to the Science Museum and lunch at that Italian place we like. He kept trying too. Hard, like if he was nice enough, we'd forget what he did. Did he mention—" I left the question unfinished. "His other family?" Lucas's voice dripped with sarcasm. "Yeah, he tried. Said he wanted us to understand the situation. As if there's anything to understand." Lily picked at her fingernail. "Polish. He said the baby's really sick, that they might have to operate as soon as she's born." My heart contracted despite myself. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Why are you sorry?" Lucas demanded. "That baby ruined our family." "No, Lucas," I corrected gently. "Your father's choices ruined our family. The baby is innocent in all this." He stormed out of the kitchen, his anger palpable. Lily watched him go, then turned to me with troubled eyes. "Dad asked if we'd consider meeting Sophia someday," she said quietly. "Not now, but eventually. He said she wants to, that she feels terrible about how everything happened." I took a deep breath, tamping down my instinctive rejection of the idea. "What did you say?" "I said I'd think about it," Lily admitted. Lucas told him to go to hell. I couldn't blame either of them for their reactions. While I understood intellectually that establishing some kind of civil relationship with Sophia might eventually be necessary, she would, after all, be the mother of the twins' half-sister. Emotionally, I was nowhere near ready to consider it. "There's no rush," I assured Lily. "You and Lucas get to decide when or if you're ready for that step." She nodded, then asked the question I'd been dreading. "Are you and Dad getting divorced?" The direct query hit me like a physical blow. Despite the legal proceedings already in motion, I had avoided using that word with the twins, partly to protect them and partly because saying it aloud made it too real. "We're figuring things out," I hedged. "Right now, we're separated while we work through the legal and practical issues." "But he's having a baby with another woman," Lily pressed. "People don't usually get back together after that, do they?" Her perceptiveness sometimes took my breath away. At 14, she saw through adult evasions with disconcerting clarity. "No," I admitted finally. "They usually don't." She was quiet for a moment, absorbing this confirmation. "Would you want to? Get back together with him, I mean?" The question forced me to confront something I'd been avoiding. Did I want to salvage my marriage? Could I ever trust Marcus again after such a profound betrayal? Could I accept his child, with another woman as part of our lives? "I don't think so, honey," I said softly. "What your dad did, it broke something fundamental between us. I'll always care about him as your father, but I don't think I could ever trust him as my husband again." Lily nodded, seemingly satisfied with my honesty. "That's what I thought. Dad keeps talking like it's just a matter of time before you forgive him. He doesn't get it. What doesn't he get? That you're stronger than he thinks. That we all are. She stood up, suddenly sounding much older than her 14 years. We don't need him to be okay, Mom. We just need you. With that, she left the kitchen, leaving me to marvel at her wisdom and resilience. In the midst of this crisis, my children were revealing depths I hadn't fully appreciated before. They were hurt, angry, confused, but they were also adapting, processing, growing. Maybe we would all emerge from this disaster stronger than before, even if the path there was painful. The following Wednesday, I was reviewing exhibition layouts in my office when my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, but something compelled me to answer. Hello? Olivia? The female voice was unfamiliar at first. It's Sophia Miller. Please don't hang up. My blood ran cold. The last person I expected or wanted to hear from was my husband's mistress. How did you get this number? From Marcus's phone, she admitted. He doesn't know I'm calling. I need to talk to you. I can't imagine what we possibly have to discuss. There was a pause, a shaky inhale. The baby. I'm having complications. The doctors want to deliver early and I'm scared. Marcus is falling apart, and I don't have anyone else. The vulnerability in her voice caught me off guard. This wasn't the confident woman who had announced her pregnancy to the entire Bennett family. This was someone terrified and alone. I'm sorry you're going through that, I said carefully, but I don't see what it has to do with me. I know you have every reason to hate me, Sophia continued, her voice breaking. What I did was unforgivable. But this baby, she's innocent in all this. She's going to need surgery right after birth, and there are risks. I just thought, Marcus said you're the strongest person he knows. That you always know what to do in a crisis. The irony was so bitter I almost laughed. Marcus, praising my strength to his mistress while systematically undermining our marriage for 2 years. Please, Sophia pressed when I remained silent. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking for kindness. I don't know what I need. Someone who understands what it's like to be a mother, I guess. You slept with my husband for 2 years, I reminded her, anger bubbling to the surface. You knew he had a family, a wife, children, and you still chose to pursue a relationship with him, to get pregnant with his child. Now you want motherly advice from me? I know how it sounds, she said quietly, but I'm desperate. The doctors are talking about delivering next week, 2 months early. They say the baby's heart can't handle the stress of pregnancy much longer. I'm terrified she won't survive. Despite everything, I felt a pang of sympathy. No mother should have to face such fear alone. But I wasn't just any woman Sophia was reaching out to. I was the wife her baby's father had betrayed. I'm sorry, I said finally. I truly am, but I can't be your support system through this. It's too much to ask. There was a long silence. I understand, Sophia said eventually. I shouldn't have called. I'm sorry for disturbing you. After we hung up, I sat at my desk, emotions churning. Part of me was furious at her audacity, at the assumption that I could or would set aside the pain she had helped inflict to offer comfort and guidance. But another part, the part that had loved Marcus for 15 years, that had carried and given birth to his children, couldn't help but feel for the woman facing such a terrifying medical crisis with her baby. I pushed the thoughts aside, focusing instead on the exhibition layouts before me. But the conversation with Sophia lingered, an unwelcome intrusion into the careful compartmentalization I'd been attempting. By the time I returned home that evening, I had made up my mind to put the call out of my thoughts. I had enough to deal with, supporting the twins through this upheaval, keeping up with work, navigating the legal labyrinth of divorce. I couldn't take on Sophia's emotional needs too. But as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, her frightened voice echoed in my mind. A baby with a heart condition. Surgery right after birth. 2 months premature. Whatever my feelings about Sophia, or Marcus, that tiny life hanging in the balance was innocent. I thought of my own pregnancies, how fortunate I'd been to deliver 2 healthy babies with Marcus by my side throughout. The thought of facing such a medical crisis alone, even with the father present but falling apart himself, it struck a chord I couldn't quite silence. Before I could talk myself out of it, I reached for my phone and typed out a text to Marcus. Sophia called me today. She said there are complications with the baby. His response came almost immediately. She called you? I'm sorry, I didn't. No, she was going to do that. Are you okay? I'm fine. Is what she said true? About delivering early and the heart condition? Yes. The doctors want to deliver next week at 32 weeks, then immediate surgery. They're preparing us for the worst. I stared at his message, imagining Marcus in a hospital consultation room, hearing that his unborn daughter might not survive. Despite everything, a wave of compassion washed over me. I'm sorry, Marcus. No parent should have to face that. Thank you, Liv. That means more than you know. I hesitated, then asked the question that had been nagging at me. Does she have family support? Friends? Anyone? Her parents are deceased. She has a sister in California who's trying to get time off work to come, but it's not certain. Some friends, but no one close. The picture of Sophia's isolation grew clearer. Whatever justified anger I felt toward her, the thought of her facing such a crisis essentially alone troubled me. If she needs anything, practical information, someone to talk to who's been through childbirth, she can call me again. I sent the message before I could reconsider, unsure if I was being compassionate or masochistic. Maybe both. Marcus's response was immediate. Really? Liv, that's incredibly generous, given everything. It's not for you or for her, it's for the baby. I understand. Thank you. I know this doesn't change anything between us, but it means a lot. I set the phone aside, wondering if I had just made a terrible mistake. Offering support to my husband's mistress as she gave birth to his child seemed like a new low in self-respect. Yet refusing to help someone genuinely in need because of my own hurt feelings felt equally wrong. There were no good choices in this situation, no clear path forward that didn't involve pain and compromise. I was navigating uncharted waters, making it up as I went along. The call came 5 days later, on a Tuesday afternoon, while I was in a budget meeting at the museum. Marcus's name flashing on my phone screen was unusual enough that I excused myself to answer. The baby's coming, he said without preamble, his voice tight with tension. Sophia's being prepped for an emergency C-section. The baby's heart rate is dropping. I gripped the phone tighter. Which hospital? New York Presbyterian. Liv, I'm scared. The doctors are saying... His voice broke. They're saying there's a significant chance the baby won't survive the birth, and if she does, the surgery is high risk. I don't know what to do. In that moment, he wasn't my unfaithful husband or the man who had shattered our family. He was simply a terrified parent facing the possible loss of his child, and despite everything, I couldn't be indifferent to that pain. Do you want me to come? The words left my mouth before I fully processed them. There was a stunned silence. You would do that? Not for you, I clarified. Not even for Sophia. But no one should be alone at a time like this. Thank you, he whispered. But no, I think that would be too much for everyone. I needed to tell someone who would understand. And you're still the person I turn to in a crisis. The irony of his statement wasn't lost on me. Let me know what happens, I said simply, and ended the call. I returned to my meeting, but my mind was at the hospital with Marcus, with Sophia, with the tiny baby fighting for her life before she'd even taken her first breath. Diana noticed my distraction and pulled me aside afterward. "Everything okay?" I laughed humorlessly. "Marcus's girlfriend is having their baby. Emergency C-section. The baby has a heart condition." Diana's eyes widened. "And you're here instead of, I don't know, burning his clothes in the driveway?" "Believe me, I considered that option," I admitted. "But the situation is complicated. The baby might not survive." "And despite everything, you care," Diana observed. "That's who you are, Liv. It's not a weakness." I sighed, suddenly exhausted. Sometimes I think it would be easier if I could just hate them both completely. Easier, maybe, but not better. She squeezed my arm. "Go home. Take the rest of the day. Whatever happens at that hospital, you're going to need some space to process it." I followed her advice, picking up the twins from school on my way home. They sensed something was wrong immediately. "What happened?" Lucas demanded as soon as we were in the car. "Is it Dad?" I hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Sophia went into labor early. The baby is being delivered by emergency C-section." Lily's eyes widened. "Is the baby going to be okay?" "I don't know, honey. There are serious complications." Lucas stared out the window, his expression unreadable. "Why do you care? It's not our problem." "Lucas," I began, then paused, searching for the right words. "I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But that baby is your half-sister, and right now, she's fighting for her life. So we're supposed to what? Feel sorry for Dad and his girlfriend?" "You're not supposed to feel anything you don't genuinely feel," I said carefully. "I'm just letting you know what's happening because it might affect your father's availability in the coming days." We drove the rest of the way in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. At home, the twins disappeared to their rooms while I made dinner on autopilot, checking my phone periodically for updates. It was nearly 9 o'clock when Marcus finally called again. "She's here," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Charlotte Elizabeth, 3 pounds, 4 ounces. They took her directly to surgery." "How is she doing?" I asked, sitting down at the kitchen table. "It's touch and go. The next 24 hours are critical. But she's fighting." Pride mingled with fear in his voice. "She's so tiny, Liv. So fragile, but she's fighting." "And Sophia?" "Recovering from the C-section. It's been hard. She was barely conscious when they took the baby." I closed my eyes, remembering the disorientation after my own C-section with the twins, the momentary panic when they were whisked away for standard newborn care. What Sophia was experiencing was that fear multiplied exponentially. "Is her sister there yet?" "No, she can't get a flight until tomorrow." Marcus sounded exhausted. "I'm the only one here." "You should rest," I advised. "You won't be any good to either of them if you collapse." He gave a hollow laugh. "That's exactly what you said when the twins were born and I tried to stay awake for 2 days straight." The memory hovered between us. Marcus, wide-eyed and terrified as the doctors had rushed me into an emergency C-section when the twins' heart rates dropped during labor. He had stayed by my side through it all, cutting the umbilical cords, holding my hand, whispering encouragement. "Get some sleep, Marcus," I said, pushing the memory away. "Call if there's any news about Charlotte." After we hung up, I sat in the quiet kitchen, processing the strange reality that Marcus now had another daughter, a tiny, struggling life that connected all of us whether we wanted that connection or not. When I went upstairs, I found both, twins in Lily's room, huddled together on her bed. "Is the baby okay?" Lily asked immediately. "She's in surgery," I explained, sitting on the edge of the bed. "She's very small and her heart needs repair. The doctors are doing everything they can What's her name? Lily's question surprised me. Charlotte Elizabeth. Lucas, who had been silent, finally spoke. Does she look like Dad? The simple question revealed so much about his conflicted feelings. Despite his anger, he was curious about this half-sister, this new Bennett entering the world under such precarious circumstances. I don't know, I admitted. I haven't seen her, but your father says she's fighting hard. Lucas nodded, a look of grudging respect crossing his face. Bennetts are stubborn. That they are, I agreed, ruffling his hair. Like someone else I know. A faint smile tugged at his lips. If she's Dad's kid, she'll probably be too stubborn to give up. The moment of connection, of shared concern for baby Charlotte, felt like a tiny step forward in our collective healing. The wound Marcus had inflicted was still raw. But perhaps, just perhaps, his youngest daughter might become a bridge rather than a barrier between the fractured pieces of our family. The next 72 hours passed in a surreal blur. Marcus called with regular updates on Charlotte's condition. The surgery had been successful, but she remained in critical condition in the NICU, her tiny body connected to a maze of tubes and monitors. Sophia was recovering physically but struggling emotionally with the separation from her daughter and the uncertain prognosis. I found myself in the strange position of being a distant but invested observer in this drama. Not quite family, yet not entirely detached. The twins asked for updates, revealing their own complicated feelings about their new half-sister. Lily admitted to praying for Charlotte, while Lucas maintained a facade of indifference that occasionally cracked to reveal genuine concern. On Friday afternoon, I was preparing to leave the museum when my phone rang. Sophia's number. Olivia? Her voice was thin, fragile. I hope it's okay that I'm calling. It's fine, I said, surprised by my own lack of hostility. How are you feeling? Physically better. Emotionally. She trailed off. They're letting me see Charlotte more now. I can touch her through the incubator. She's so small. Premature babies are remarkably resilient, I offered. The twins were 5 weeks early, though not as early as Charlotte. I didn't know that, Sophia said softly. Marcus never mentioned it. Of course he hadn't. Marcus had compartmentalized his two lives so completely that details about his children's birth wouldn't have seemed relevant to share with his mistress. The thought brought a fresh wave of anger, but I pushed it aside. Why did you call, Sophia? She was quiet for a moment. The doctors say Charlotte is stable enough that they're allowing more visitors. Family only, but Marcus said the twins might want to meet their sister someday. I know it's probably too soon, but I thought you should know it's an option. The suggestion took me by surprise. I don't think they're ready for that. Or that I'm ready for that, frankly. I understand, she said quickly. Of course you're not. It was presumptuous of me to even suggest it. But her words had planted a seed. Would seeing Charlotte make this situation more real for the twins, help them process what had happened? Or would it only deepen the wound, confronting them with physical proof of their father's betrayal? I'll talk to them, I found myself saying. I'm not promising anything, but I'll see how they feel about it. Thank you, Sophia whispered. That's more than I deserve. After we hung up, I sat in my car for a long time, questioning my own judgment. Was I being too accommodating, too understanding of the woman who had helped destroy my marriage? Or was I doing the right thing for all the children involved, my twins and baby Charlotte? There were no easy answers, no guidebook for navigating this uncharted territory. All I could do was follow my instincts and hope they led somewhere healing, rather than somewhere more painful. That evening, after dinner, I broached the subject with the twins. Charlotte is stable enough for more visitors, I said carefully. Sophia mentioned that if you were interested in meeting your half-sister, it would be possible. Lucas's fork clattered against his plate. Are you serious? You want us to go see Dad's love child? I don't want anything, I clarified. I'm simply telling you it's an option. This is entirely your decision. Lily was quiet, considering. Would you come with us? If we decided to go? The question caught me off guard. Would I walk into that hospital, face to face with Marcus and Sophia and their newborn daughter? The thought made my stomach clench. If that's what you needed from me, yes, I said finally. But don't make this decision based on what you think you should do, or what might make your father happy. This is about what feels right for you. Lucas shook his head. I don't want to go. I don't want to see her or Sophia ever. Lily twisted her napkin in her hands. I kind of do, she admitted in a small voice. Not right away, but eventually. She's our sister, even if we didn't ask for her. I nodded, respecting both their positions. There's no rush. Charlotte will be in the hospital for weeks, maybe months. You can change your minds either way. Later that night, as I was getting ready for bed, my phone rang again. Marcus this time. Sophia told me she called you, he said without greeting. About the twins possibly visiting. I spoke to them about it, I confirmed. Lucas isn't ready. Lily might be eventually. I told them there's no pressure either way. Marcus was quiet, for a moment. Thank you for even considering it. I know how difficult this must be for you. I'm not doing it for you or for Sophia, I reminded him. I'm doing what I think is best for the twins. They're struggling to make sense of all this, and seeing Charlotte might help them process it. Or it might not. I honestly don't know. And what about you? He asked softly. Would you come too? The question mirrored Lily's earlier one, forcing me to confront my own complicated feelings. I don't know, Marcus. Part of me thinks it would be crossing a line I'm not ready to cross. Another part feels like I should see her. This child who's connected to my children forever now. She's beautiful, Liv, he said, his voice gentle. She looks a bit like Lily did. Same nose, same chin. The comparison sent a jolt through me. Of course, Charlotte would resemble the twins. They shared half their DNA. Intellectually, I had known this, but emotionally, the reality of it hit me anew. Let's focus on the twins for now, I said, redirecting the conversation. If and when they're ready to visit, we can figure out the logistics. After we hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed, overwhelmed by the surreal turns my life had taken. A month ago, I had been Olivia Bennett, curator and mother, with a seemingly solid marriage and predictable future. Now I was negotiating hospital, visits between my children and their father's love child, engaging in civil conversations with his mistress, and trying to find a path forward through the wreckage of betrayal. And yet, strangely, I felt a growing sense of my own resilience. The ground beneath me had shifted dramatically, but I was still standing. Still making decisions. Still putting one foot in front of the other. Still finding moments of grace in the midst of pain. Perhaps that was what healing looked like in the aftermath of betrayal. Not the absence of pain or the erasure of wounds, but the discovery of strength I hadn't known I possessed. Chapter 6. Unexpected Connections. 2 weeks. After Charlotte's birth, life had settled into a strained new pattern. Marcus split his time between the hotel, the hospital, and brief, awkward visits with the twins. The divorce proceedings continued in the background, a steady drumbeat of paperwork and legal consultations outlining the dismantling of our shared life. On a rainy Saturday afternoon, Lily approached me as I sorted through photo albums in the study, part of my ongoing project to separate the entangled threads of our family history. I want to see her, she announced, her voice quiet but determined. Charlotte, I want to meet my sister. I set down the album I'd been holding, giving her my full attention. Are you sure? There's no rush, Lily. She nodded, twisting the friendship bracelets on her wrist, a nervous habit since childhood. I'm sure. Dad keeps sending pictures, but it's not the same. I need to see her for real. Okay, I said simply. I'll make the arrangements with your father. Will you come with me? The vulnerability in her eyes made my heart ache. I had been dreading this moment, unsure if I was strong enough to face the physical embodiment of Marcus's betrayal. But looking at my daughter, so brave, so willing to open her heart despite the pain she'd endured, how could I refuse? Of course I will, I promised. We'll go together. Lucas, when informed of the plan, maintained his stance of rejection. I'm not ready, he insisted. Maybe never. I respected his boundary, arranging with Marcus for Lily and me to visit the NICU the following afternoon. The prospect of seeing Sophia face to face made my stomach knot with anxiety, but I reminded myself that this wasn't about me or my feelings. It was about supporting Lily through an important and difficult step. The hospital corridor seemed endless as we followed Marcus toward the NICU the next day. Lily gripped my hand tightly, her palms sweaty with nervousness. I squeezed back, projecting a calm I didn't entirely feel. Sophia's with her now, Marcus informed us as we approached the unit. She's nervous about seeing you. That makes two of us, I murmured. He gave me a quick, grateful look. Thank you for doing this, Liv, for Lily, and for Charlotte. We underwent the strict NICU protocols, hand-washing, gowning, instructions about touching and noise levels. Then Marcus led us into the room filled with incubators and monitoring equipment, a symphony of beeps and soft alarms marking the precarious existence of its tiny occupants. In the far corner, a woman sat beside one of the incubators, her hand inserted through a small opening to touch the baby within. Sophia looked up as we approached, her face pale and drawn from the ordeal of the past weeks. When our eyes met, a complex emotion passed between us. Recognition, apology, shared humanity. Olivia, she acknowledged softly. Thank you for coming, and you must be Lily. She smiled at my daughter, a genuine warmth in her expression. Your dad has told me so much about you. Lily nodded stiffly, her attention already drawn to the incubator. Inside, looking impossibly small amid the tubes and monitors, lay baby Charlotte. Her skin had the translucent quality of extremely premature infants, but there was a healthy pink tone beneath. Dark hair, just like the twins had had, covered her tiny head. She's so small, Lily whispered, moving closer. Smaller than my dolls. 3 pounds, 11 ounces now, Sophia said proudly. She's gained 7 ounces since birth. I found myself drawn to the incubator, examining the tiny face of this baby who had unwittingly become the center of a family crisis. Marcus had been right. There was something of Lily in her features, a shared genetic blueprint that couldn't be denied. Would you like to touch her? Sophia offered Lily, indicating the opening in the incubator. It's okay if you don't want to. Lily hesitated, then nodded. Marcus guided her hand through the opening, showing her how to place her finger gently in Charlotte's palm. When the baby's tiny fingers reflexively curled around Lily's, my daughter's face transformed with wonder. She's holding my finger, she breathed. She's so strong. Yes, she is, Sophia agreed, tears in her eyes. The doctors say she's a fighter. I stood slightly apart, watching this tableau. My daughter, my husband, his mistress, and their child. It should have been unbearably painful, and in some ways it was. But there was also something unexpectedly healing in the simple humanity of the moment. Here was no villain, no homewrecker, just a mother worried about her fragile baby. No philandering husband, just a father torn between his children. And Charlotte herself was purely innocent, deserving of love despite the circumstances of her conception. Would you like to touch her? Sophia asked me suddenly. The question caught me off guard. Part of me wanted to refuse, to maintain some distance from this living symbol of betrayal. But another part, the part that remembered the fierce, protective love I'd felt the moment the twins were placed in my arms. Couldn't reject this innocent child. Slowly, I moved forward and placed my hand through the opening. Charlotte's skin was warm and impossibly soft. Her chest rose and fell with rapid, shallow breaths, each one a testament to her determination to survive. "Hello, Charlotte," I said softly. "You're doing so well." When I looked up, Sophia was watching me with tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, "for everything. You didn't deserve any of this." The simple acknowledgement, the first direct apology she had offered, broke something open inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of a path toward it. "No, I didn't," I agreed quietly. But neither did she. I nodded toward Charlotte. "Or Lily and Lucas. We all have to find a way forward now." Marcus, who had been watching this exchange with visible emotion, placed his hand on Lily's shoulder. "Charlotte's lucky to have such a wonderful big sister," he said, "and to have a mother who's showing her what true strength looks like." His eyes met mine, filled with regret and gratitude. We stayed for half an hour, Lily asking questions about Charlotte's care, her prognosis, when she might come home. Sophia answered with patience and honesty, never presuming on a relationship, but clearly grateful for Lily's interest. As we prepared to leave, Sophia walked us to the NICU entrance while Marcus stayed with Charlotte. "Thank you," she said to me, her voice low. "I know how hard this must have been. You're a remarkable woman, Olivia." "I'm just trying to do what's right for my children," I replied. "Charlotte is their sister. Whatever happened between the adults in this situation." Sophia nodded, then hesitated before speaking again. "For what it's worth, I never intended to break up your family. That sounds like a terrible cliché, I know. But when Marcus and I met, he said things were complicated between you, that you were growing apart. The familiar justification, the oldest excuse in the cheater's handbook, should have infuriated me. Instead, I felt a strange calm. "That's what he told you," I acknowledged. Maybe he even believed it. But the truth is, I had no idea there were problems until your announcement at the reunion. We weren't perfect, but we were solid. Or so I thought. Sophia's face registered shock, then a deeper understanding. "I'm sorry," she said simply. "I should have asked more questions, pushed harder for the truth." "Yes, you should have," I agreed. "But ultimately, Marcus was the one who made vows to me, not you. He's the one who betrayed those vows." As we walked to the car, Lily was unusually quiet, processing the experience of meeting her half-sister for the first time. "Are you okay?" I asked gently as we drove home. She stared out the window at the passing scenery. "She looks like us, like me and Lucas, and—" "Yes, she does," I acknowledged. "That makes it real, you know? Before, it was like a story happening to someone else. But seeing her—" She turned to me, her young face troubled. "I don't know how to feel, Mom. Part of me wants to hate her, because she's why Dad left, but she's just a baby, and she's really sick, and she's my sister." I reached over to squeeze her hand. "You don't have to figure it all out right now, honey. It's okay to have complicated feelings. We all do." "Even you?" she asked. "Especially me," I admitted. "I'm angry at your father and at Sophia for the choices they made, but Charlotte is innocent in all this, and seeing her today, I couldn't help feeling concern for her. That doesn't mean I excuse what happened, or that everything is suddenly okay." Lily nodded, considering this. "Lucas should see her too. I think it would help him." "Maybe," I agreed, "but that has to be his decision in his own time." When we arrived home, Lily immediately sought out her brother, eager to share her experience. I left them to talk privately, retreating to the kitchen to prepare dinner and process my own complex emotions. The visit had changed something, shifted the landscape of our new reality in ways I was still trying to understand. Charlotte was no longer an abstract concept, the nameless other child, but a real baby with Marcus's chin and Lily's nose, fighting for her life with a determination that couldn't help but inspire respect. And Sophia, the mistress, the homewrecker, had revealed herself to be human too, flawed certainly, complicit in the destruction of my marriage, but also a frightened new mother facing her child's medical crisis with as much grace as she could muster. None of this excused what they had done. The betrayal remained, the pain still fresh. But seeing them as whole, complex humans rather than cartoon villains was strangely liberating. It allowed me to focus my anger more precisely on the actual crimes, the deception, the lies, the selfishness, rather than demonizing the people themselves. Later that evening, after the twins had gone to bed, I received a text from Marcus. "Thank you for today. It meant the world to Charlotte and to Sophia, and to me." I stared at the message, unsure how to respond. Part of me wanted to remind him that I hadn't done it for him or for Sophia, that my only concern was supporting Lily. But the truth was more nuanced than that. I had gone for Lily, yes, but also for myself, to confront the reality of my new life head-on rather than hiding from it. And perhaps, in some small way, for Charlotte too, an innocent child who deserved to know her siblings. "How is she doing?" "Tonight?" I texted back. "Stable. The cardiologist is pleased with her progress since the surgery. They're talking about removing one of the breathing tubes tomorrow if she continues to improve." "That's good news." There was a pause before his next message appeared. "Sophia was moved by your kindness today. So was I. After everything we've done, you still found compassion. I don't deserve your generosity, but I'm grateful for it." I considered his words, turning them over in my mind. Was it generosity I had shown, or simply basic human decency? And did the distinction even matter? "I'm not doing any of this for you, Marcus. I'm finding my own way through this mess, trying to do what's right for all the children involved. Don't mistake that for forgiveness." "I understand," he replied immediately. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I see your strength and your grace, and I'm in awe of both." I didn't respond further, setting my phone aside and curling up on the couch with a glass of wine. Outside, rain pattered against the windows, a soothing rhythm in the quiet house. For the first time since the revelation at the reunion, I felt something like peace. Not happiness, not acceptance exactly, but a calm certainty that I would survive this, that the twins would survive it, that we would find our way to a new normal, whatever shape that might take. The future remained uncertain, fraught with complications I couldn't yet imagine. How would we navigate holidays with Charlotte? In the picture? School events? Family milestones? What role, if any, would Sophia play in the twins' lives? How would we explain the situation to friends, to extended family, to the twins' peers? But those were questions for tomorrow. Tonight, I allowed myself to simply be a woman in transition, neither the wife I had been nor fully the independent person I would become, but somewhere in between. Finding my footing one careful step at a time. The following week brought unexpected developments. Lucas, after hearing Lily's account of meeting Charlotte, announced his reluctant willingness to visit the hospital. Meanwhile, Charlotte's condition improved enough that her most critical breathing support was removed, a significant milestone in her recovery. "They're calling her the miracle baby," Marcus reported during a brief visit to pick up the twins. "The doctors didn't think she'd do this well this quickly." "That's wonderful news," I said sincerely. "When does Lucas want to visit?" "Tomorrow afternoon, if that works for you." He hesitated. "Will you come again?" I considered my schedule. The museum exhibition nearing its final preparatory stages. The divorce proceedings advancing with methodical indifference to the human emotions involved. I can't. There's too much happening at work right now. Marcus nodded, accepting this without question. I understand. I'll take good care of him. I know you will, I acknowledged. Whatever Marcus's failings as a husband, his love for our children had never been in doubt. When Lucas returned from the hospital visit, his expression was thoughtful, the habitual anger of recent weeks temporarily subdued. She held my finger, he reported, trying to sound nonchalant. And the nurse said I could help change her diaper, next time if I want. Do you want to? I asked, matching his casual tone. He shrugged. Maybe. She's actually kind of cool for a baby. The NICU doctor said she's really strong. Bennetts are stubborn, remember? I reminded him with a smile. A ghost of a grin crossed his face. Yeah, Dad said the same thing. How was it seeing Sophia? I ventured carefully. Lucas's expression clouded slightly. Weird. She was nice, I guess. Kept telling me how much Charlotte looks like me when I was a baby. Dad showed her pictures, apparently. The idea of Marcus sharing baby photos of our twins with Sophia sent a pang through me. Another boundary crossed. Another piece of our history. Reframed. But I kept my expression neutral. And how did that make you feel? I don't know. He picked at a loose thread on his jeans. Mad, at first. But then, Charlotte does look like me. Like us. She can't help that, you know? No, she can't, I agreed softly. Lucas studied my face. Are you mad that I went? That I didn't hate her? Of course not, I assured him quickly. Charlotte is your sister. It's natural to feel a connection to her, to be concerned about her health. That doesn't mean you're betraying me or dismissing what your father did. He nodded, relief evident in the relaxing of his shoulders. Dad wants us to come for dinner when Charlotte gets out of the hospital. Not right away, but eventually. So, his new apartment. The news that Marcus had rented an apartment, a more permanent arrangement than the hotel, shouldn't have surprised me. Of course he needed a stable living situation, especially with a newborn eventually joining his household. But it marked another step in the dissolution of our marriage, another confirmation that our separation was permanent. How do you feel about that? I asked Lucas. I don't know, he admitted. It's like, everything's different now. Dad's not coming home, is he? The direct question deserved a direct answer. No, honey, he's not. Lucas absorbed this confirmation, his young face solemn. Because of what he did with Sophia? Or because of Charlotte? Both, I said honestly. What happened between your father and Sophia broke the trust in our marriage. That trust can't be repaired. And now there's Charlotte, who deserves a father who's present in her life too. So we're getting divorced, Lucas stated flatly. For real. Yes, we are. He was quiet for a long moment, then asked the question that had clearly been weighing on him. Will I have to live at Dad's apartment sometimes? With Sophia and Charlotte? That depends on what we work out for custody arrangements, I explained. And on what you and Lily feel comfortable with. You're old enough that the court will consider your preferences. I want to live here, he said immediately. With you. But I still want to see Dad, and maybe Charlotte too. That can be arranged, I assured him. We'll figure out a schedule that works for everyone. Later that night, I called Diana, needing a friend's perspective on the rapidly evolving situation. Lucas visited Charlotte today, I told her. He actually connected with her, called her cool for a baby. Diana laughed. High praise from a 14-year-old boy. How are you feeling about all this? I sighed, cradling my glass of wine. Conflicted. I'm glad the twins are forming a relationship with their sister. She's innocent in all this, and they share DNA,